Welcome. There's no way to say it nicely. The stench of corruption hangs over American politics like smog over Shanghai. Every day brings new headlines. If it's not in Chris Christie's New Jersey, it's in Ray Nagin's New Orleans, where the former mayor has been convicted for taking bribes and kickbacks. And in our nation's capital, the revolving door whirls like a runaway carousel, delivering one member of Congress or top staffer after another into the waiting arms of corporate mercenaries offering top dollar for services rendered, never mind the conflicts of interest. And all the while, gushers of money pour into political campaigns nonstop, producing a marionette government of legalized theft. You would think all this sleaze would be enough to turn everyone off, and it has indeed provoked dangerously widespread cynicism and apathy, but not among the two men on this broadcast. You'll meet Lawrence Lessig later in the show, but first, we're back with David Simon, the former crime reporter turned television producer. He created two acclaimed series for HBO, Treme, about the struggle to rebuild post-Katrina New Orleans, and The Wire, the story of crime and punishment in the streets of Baltimore.
Campaign runs on dollars, you know it.
Each showed how corrupted capitalism and politics leave poor people at the mercy of a rigged system.
You are amoral, are you not? You are feeding off the violence and the despair of the drug trade. You're stealing from those who themselves are stealing the lifeblood from our city. You are a parasite who leeches off
just like you,
the culture of drugs. Excuse me? What?
I got the shotgun. You got the briefcase. It's on the game though, right?
What I remember so vividly after watching that scene is that the law shrugged. That's quite often the effect of money in politics. The system works only for those who pay to play, who have bought the rule-making machinery of government. As David Simon put it when he was here 2 weeks ago,
you can buy these guys on the cheap. And capital's been at it a long time, and the rules have been relaxed, and the Supreme Court has walked away from any sort of responsibility to maintain democracy at that level. That's the aspect of government that's broken.
Simon talked about this last fall in a speech at the Festival of Dangerous Ideas in Australia. Here's the conclusion of his message.
The last job of capitalism, having won all the battles against labor, having acquired the ultimate authority, almost the ultimate moral authority over what's a good idea or what's not, or what's valued and what's not, the last journey for capital in my country has been to buy the electoral process, the one venue for reform that remained. And ultimately, right now, capital has effectively purchased the government.
Your summation is grim but true. Capital owns our politics. What do we do about it?
I think if I could fix one thing, if I could concentrate and focus on one thing and hope that by breaking the cycle, you might start to walk this nightmare back, it would be campaign finance reform. The logic of Citizens United and other decisions that are framed around that. Certainly our judicial branch has failed to value the idea of one man, one vote. You don't count more because you run a corporation and you can heave money in favor of your political philosophy onto the process. You don't count more. You're one guy.
Free speech, the court has said.
Of course.
Free speech under the First Amendment, corporations have the right of...
And you know what? Right. And you know what? Everyone reacted the wrong way when they heard that decision. They all, the chant from the left became, corporations are people? Corporations are not people. Well, no, actually under the law, that's the reason for corporations. If you know, they are indeed given the rights of individuals, and that's why you form corporations, and that's how the law treats them. They're sociopaths as people. You know, they report all, they have to report their profit to the, I mean, that's who they are, but you know, by definition, you know, if all you care about is your profit to the shareholders, you know, and nothing else in human terms, you're probably a sociopath. But okay, they get to exist as, no, it was that speech is money. That was, when you start equating speech with money, and you see them as being comparable, money is in a fundamental regard, the opposite of speech in many ways. Speech, you know, I mean, or it's a kind of speech so foul that it shouldn't have the weight it has in our democracy. And that to me was the nails in the coffin. If you can't fix the elections so that they actually resemble the popular will if the combination of the monetization of the elections and gerrymandering create a bicameral legislature that doesn't in any way reflect the will of the American people, you've reached the end game for democracy, and I think we have.
You were very clear in your Australian speech that capitalism is no blueprint for building a society. It's not the road to a just country, you say.
Well, it's not. It's a tool for building wealth. If wealth is the only measure of your society, I'm not saying it isn't a measure, but if wealth is the only measure of society and there's no distinction on how that wealth is going to be distributed among the various classes, or how that wealth is going to be put to the needs of the society, or how the society is going to be protected from inevitable threat, if all of those things are not, if how the society's infrastructure, shared infrastructure, is fashioned and whether or not it's sustainable, if all those things are not metrics, and if it's just about generating mass wealth, then what are we saying? What are we saying about the human condition? What are we saying about our society's condition?
Then how do you tame the greed?
You have to do it legislatively. And how do you do that when your legislative aspect has been completely purchased by the very capital that is being amassed? That's the problem. There isn't a Teddy Roosevelt confronting these robber barons.
Are you angry about this?
Aren't you?
Yes.
I mean, listen, I have a good life. I go,
Same here.
I go to the playground with my kid. I watch the game on Saturday. I'm not like an angry person, but I can't look at politics and be sanguine about where we're going.
And you understand why so many people whose anger turns to resignation.
Resignation or contempt for government as an idea. That's a luxury we don't have. It is basically either on one side, it's people who think I can do well on my own and screw my neighbor, and it's basically greed wrapping itself in the mantle of a legitimate ideology, or it's just people who are not doing well who are saying, the government's my enemy. If democracy is going to work, the government in some sense is you and your neighbors. And if it's not, that's the fight to have. And that fight can't be had by walking away. If 20% of the people in America end up voting in elections that they don't think matter, and they're right, well, they'll be right, but the democracy will die regardless. It's like I say, it's a fight worth having even if we're going to lose. But right now, I have to say, they've purchased so much and so deeply, and the contempt for the idea of the popular will is so firm in the people who are rigging the game that the logical outcome a generation from now may be that just people pick up a brick. And I don't know what happens after people pick up nobody does. Nobody quite knows where it goes. Revolution's all good when it's in theory. But
when the blood runs.
Yeah, and first of all, the right people don't always get hit by the right bricks. And second of all, as they're finding in Tahrir Square now, you fight for one thing, you get another. And I'm not saying I'm looking forward to the brick, but it is there at the bottom. It's if enough people opt out and enough people get angry and enough people start to find themselves deeply at the margins, and increasingly it starts to span across racial and social lines to include actual white folk, it'll be an interesting dynamic.
David, I don't know anyone who has made a more dire and dark conclusion.
Oh, no. This guy's to the...
No, I don't. But at the same time, you don't give up. You keep writing these stories. You keep trying to tell us through...
Well, I like the stories are good. For me, they're stories I want to tell. You ever read Camus, the Myth of Sisyphus?
Sisyphus, yes.
Right. Well, in sum, what I took from Camus was the idea that to commit to a unlikely cause, or a cause that seems almost certain of defeat, seems absurd. But to not commit is also absurd, given the situation. And only one choice of those two offers even the remote chance at dignity. But more than that, the idea that democracy works without there being a constant fight, without us, listen, People who walk away and say, I'm not gonna play this game by which I might lose or by which the odds are stacked against me, and want the lofty position of walking away and saying no more, they're going to achieve nothing except a more rapid decline in their society. There's nowhere to go except to fight.
David Simon, thank you very much for being with me.
Thanks for having me.